Hello, everyone. My name is Mike, and who the f*** are you?
I'm Ben.
Welcome back to yet another episode. Today, I've got my buddy Ben to talk about some motherfucking Chuck Norris movies. What's up, Ben?
Absolutely. I'm happy to be on the show. Ready to discuss some Chuck with you.
So what we're going to do today is start from 1977. We're going to briefly discuss Way of the Dragon. Neither of us have seen that movie, actually.
Savoring
We're
it.
savoring it, that's right. But we're going to start with, it's going to be a retrospective. So essentially we're going to start with Breaker Breaker in 77 and go all the way up to Hero and the Terror from 88.
Yeah.
Now, he made like 16 films in that time frame.
Often are the same movie.
Pretty much. And to be honest, we've both been watching these movies over the last couple weeks, crunching down, and these plots, they sort of start to melt after a while. So we're going to do our best with remembering all the details. We've got some notes. We're just going to jump right in, guys. But before we do, I'd love to know what your favorite Chuck Norris movie is. Feel free to leave that down in the comments below. Let's get it going.
Let's do it.
All right. So let's get my handy dandy thing here. As you can see, we have our Chuck Norris.
Watching over us.
That's right. Yes, with his double Mac 10s from Invasion USA.
Yeah.
Which is iconic.
Yeah.
I love that that's what they chose for the pop.
Yeah, it had to be. It couldn't have been anything else.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So, Ben, you're going to actually have to carry me on this one because I've seen this movie once, and it wasn't too memorable. I remember trucks and some kicks here and there. What was this movie about? Do you remember?
It's got a pretty memorable Chuck performance, to be honest. I think it's a pretty solid one in terms of his acting.
Yeah.
It's got some really, really ridiculous action set pieces.
Of course.
Which is why we all love Chuck Norris
Exactly.
movies. But it's kind of misleading. It doesn't really have anything to do with a trucker. That's just his job.
Okay.
He is a trucker, but what happens is, for some reason, this corrupt cop, steals his brother and holds him for ransom.
Yeah, I remember that. Why? What was the reason for that?
I freshly watched it, and I could not tell you, really. I could not tell you.
And that's totally fine, because Breaker Breaker is not one that I really wanted to dwell on too much. And by the way, I just realized, me putting this in front of him is blocking his face. So we're not going to do that. We're going to show the movie, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So, anything else to say about this?
No, there's a really fun part at the end that's quintessential Chuck. But,
what happens? Do you remember that?
So there's a shot where a horse is getting ready to charge, and it parallels Chuck getting ready to deliver a vicious roundhouse to the face.
Okay.
And there's a parallel shot of a horse like this.
Yeah.
And then there's another shot of Chuck, eyes closed up, getting ready to kick somebody in a horse pen, by the way.
Of course.
Outside of a farm that he just destroyed with his feet. Single-handedly.
So, you know what? It sounds like I need to rewatch this, or at least watch the last scene.
Worth it for that.
It sounds like some clever editing, at least.
Yeah,
and some camera work. So that is Breaker Breaker. Moving on to the next one. All right, next one up, guys, came out in 1978. He had 3 movies in the 70s, and that is Good Guys Wear Black. You want to take us in on Good Guys Wear Black?
Yeah, Good Guys Wear Black we are getting closer and closer with every movie to peak Chuck Norris, what we know him as.
That's right.
This is a pretty solid plot. Nothing you probably haven't seen before, but Chuck works really well in this role.
And the plot, I don't know if you've seen the piece of shit David Ayer movie Sabotage.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Sabotage is horrible.
Good Guys Wear Black is way better.
Absolutely, and Good Guys Wear Black does the same kind of plot. In the very beginning, Chuck and a platoon get sent into this village where they're said to be POWs, but there aren't. So it's obviously a setup. And then the rest of the movie is the people in that platoon being picked off by an assassin.
Right.
Very much like Sabotage.
Right.
It's the same plot, but Sabotage butchered it.
Another thing funny about this one is they keep saying, this was before Missing in Action, which we'll get to later, but they keep saying the Good Guys Wear Black are missing in action in this movie, and I'm like, wow.
That's true.
That's funny as hell.
That's some prescient shit right there.
So, and I think this movie has probably one of the best Chuck Norris moments ever put to film.
I know where you're going.
You know exactly where I'm talking about. A car is trying to run him over, and then he dodges it somehow.
Yeah.
But then he jumps up and kicks a man through the windshield.
Through the windshield. And it's like, it's a double cut, it's slow motion.
I think there's even a to zoom in on his eyes again.
There might be, yeah. I don't remember that, but I believe you. But that scene really is one of those like iconic. If there was like a top 10 iconic Chuck Norris fight scenes or whatever, I guess you could count that because that's an amazing thing. And he did it all himself. It's pretty clear he actually jumped through that fucking window.
Yeah,
it looks like it.
It looks like it.
Yeah, I've never read anything that Chuck Norris has a stuntman, but come on, we know the truth.
Yeah, I mean, he had to have, but honestly, watching the movies, I'm pretty good with picking out stuntmen.
Yeah, I've never. So you picked out that obvious hard target stuntman. You know that obvious one?
It's so obvious. Oh my God.
There's never been... Matter of fact, most of the action Chuck does are close-ups on his face.
That's so true.
Right, you can see him beating the hell out of people.
Yeah, and just like fists flying.
There's a stuntman there.
He's definitely doing most of his stunts, if not all of them, except for like the super dangerous ones.
Yeah, for sure.
One thing I wanted to say about Chuck is, through watching all these movies like during a marathon, I've noticed how many different vehicles Chuck has driven. Like, okay, so car, truck, a plow, snowmobile in Good Guys Wear Black, tanks. I mean, he's like driving every single... He must have a Class A license in all of these vehicles, which is just absolutely hilarious. And in Good Guys Wear Black, he actually drives a snowmobile, which is just ridiculous. I really think this is like Chuck with this movie starts to really bring the American martial arts movie into fruition.
I agree.
And I think it's of its time, but a blonde-haired, blue-eyed American seems natural for the time to bring martial arts
doing stuff that Bruce Lee would have done.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we started filming, where if Bruce Lee didn't pass away, martial arts film history would have gone in a different direction, I think. And maybe it opened the door for Chuck Norris, and obviously we all love Bruce Lee. We wish he never went. God, I wish he was still here.
Rest his soul.
Rest his soul. We love Bruce, but I think it may have given Chuck an opportunity in America because Bruce was really popular at that time in America. So
I think it gave I think Chuck would have been important in history, but I don't think he would have been the Chuck Norris that we know him
we know and love. All right, guys, so we're going to head to 1979 for another pretty solid, I like this movie, pretty solid Chuck Norris film. That is A Force of One. And in fact, this movie is the first one that Chuck Norris is a martial artist in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He plays a martial artist.
He plays a martial art, a kickboxer.
Yeah, yeah.
And that opening sequence, I don't know if you've noticed this about that opening sequence, it's pretty well choreographed and shot, but the sound design is almost non-existent.
Yeah.
Like, there's like muffed sounds of hits, and the Americans just didn't quite get the impact that the Chinese were doing years ago. And so that first fight scene, I watched this for the first time recently, a couple weeks ago, and I was like, this is just, where's the sound? I was like putting it up to like 60. I was like, what the f***? Where's the sound? Did you notice that? Or
I did, and I think that's why this one kind of misses it for me. I definitely enjoy Breaker Breaker and Good Guys a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Because I think this one was where he was trying to veer into what we know and love as the icon that is Chuck Norris.
Yes.
But I don't think the writing and the writing and the direction was quite there yet.
I agree.
You know
I agree.
I mean?
No, I definitely agree.
So,
the film, so the plot, really quick, as far as I could remember, pretty good actors here. Jennifer O'Neill, who you've seen in other movies. I liked her in this. Ron O'Neal, who is motherfucking Superfly, blaxploitation Superfly himself, who is actually a pretty important character in the movie.
Right.
And what I was the plot, it's similar to Good Guys Wear Black. A martial artist is going around killing cops, and so the cops hire Chuck Norris to train them. Yes. So that if that happened to them, they might be able to defend themselves. And then, of course, things unfold, drug conspiracies, drug trafficking. All of these movies have drug trafficking. It was the 80s.
Right.
So that's kind of what the plot was about. I really don't have too much to say. A pretty good ending fight.
It was pretty solid, yeah. One thing I did want to mention about this one is Can I see the DVD you have?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I wanted to mention is I think this is the one where they start to market Chuck Norris as Chuck Norris that we know today.
Yes,
you know, like it's called A Force of One, and we know who the Force of One is.
Yeah.
It's the motherfucking Chuck.
It's the motherfucking Chuck. And like you said, they were laying into the martial arts kind of angle in this one. And this really started to... it started things rolling. I think things are starting to roll at this point. But that's all we really have to say about A Force of One. I think it's a solid movie. I enjoyed it. Really good acting surrounding Chuck, as usual.
For sure.
Chuck always has good actors.
I think it's one of his better acting performances.
I'll give you that, too. Because he's playing a martial artist, and it seems natural. It seems as natural as Chuck could be. We love Chuck, but he's wooden.
Little wooden.
In the best possible way.
And in Breaker, he kicks ass with wood. With a stick of wood. So watch it for that.
So there you go.
To mention.
That is awesome. All right, so next up, I believe, Octagon is next up. Okay, so I personally love this film. From 1980, it's directed by Eric Carson, who really didn't do anything else. I was looking him up earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll lead us in on this one, because...
Please do.
First of all, Lee Van motherfucking Cleef is in this. You know, Escape from New York, Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
The Bad himself.
The Bad himself. So that's always nice. But all right, first of all, take a look at this cover. Doesn't this look like Chuck Norris's Moonraker? Why are there planets? Why is there a lady with a space gun? Why are there stars? When I was a kid, or late teens, actually, when I watched this, I was like, oh, this must be Chuck Norris's sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
It's not at all.
It gets you to watch the movie for sure, but you're excited for a different reason.
You are, and the poster is amazing.
It is.
The poster is amazing. So, this is actually a Chuck Norris versus Ninja movie.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go too deep into the plot, because, honestly, who cares? But there are some really funny f***ing things about this movie. The first thing that came to mind when I first watched this, it's so ridiculous. You know where I'm going. So Chuck Norris narrates, how do you say? He talks to himself in the movie.
It's like you hear his thoughts, literally.
You hear his thoughts.
And that sounds like an oversimplification, but you literally hear what he's thinking.
You hear what he's thinking
before it happens,
and it's echoey, right?
Yeah.
So the first time this happens, well, it happens during like the opening sequence, I think.
Yeah.
But the first time it became just absolutely ridiculous. He brings a girl home, and he walks in, and he's talking to himself, and he goes, "Someone's here," and it's echoing,
and
he goes,
hear it.
Yeah, you hear it in his head, and he goes, "But where are they?" And then they take 2 steps forward, and then a ninja comes out of the dark. He pushes the woman out of the way and goes, "Get down!" And then a fight ensues in the house.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, this fight is pretty good, but it's very dark.
Yeah.
Like, you can't see what's happening.
I remember it being lit pretty mediocrely.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah, and they get better with the lighting as the film goes on. This film is known for its action and its choreography. Now, I gotta gush about one scene in particular.
I know exactly which one you're
the
talking about.
Ninja Enforcer versus Chuck fight is actually, I think, one of his best fights.
That's the final fight, right?
If not near... Yeah, I believe it's the final fight. Yeah, I believe it's the final fight.
So good, man.
It's so...
Oh, my God.
It's so good. So, you have this Ninja Enforcer in ninja garb. Now, here's some trivia. I'm not sure if you know who Richard Norton is. Do you know Richard Norton?
No.
He's an Australian actor.
Okay.
But he's like... You know him because you've seen him around, because he pops up in all these action movies from the 80s and 90s.
Really?
Yeah, I'm trying to think... Have you seen Mr. Nice Guy? Jackie Chan?
Yes.
The villain in Mr. Nice Guy. The Australian accent? Inside of that costume of the Ninja Enforcer, who hisses, by the way, he's like...
Yeah.
Richard Norton is inside that costume. Richard Norton has done stunts for some big movies, including Mad Max Fury Road. He did all the stunt work, and he actually was one of the lead Imperator guards in that movie, too. So that's some trivia on Richard Norton.
One of the best action films of the past decade. Let me
I'd
say that.
I'd go as far as to say ever.
Probably
but
ever.
Hey.
Absolutely.
That movie's amazing.
I like it. Don't hate me, YouTube. I like it better than the original Mad Maxes. I really do.
I think I might too. And I love Road Warrior, so that's saying something.
Yeah, but anywho.
So Richard Norton is in that ninja costume fighting Chuck. And that fight scene is that good because Richard Norton and Chuck had an amazing chemistry. I saw Richard Norton on the Scott Adkins podcast. If you guys haven't seen that podcast, watch
Art
the
of
Scott
Action.
Art of Action.
Please, yes.
Shout out to that podcast because it's amazing. And Richard Norton was on there, and he was talking about his relationship with Chuck and how they had this incredible chemistry.
I gotta watch that episode now.
You have to watch it.
Because I didn't know who he was at first, but now I do.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. And so hopefully some of you guys know now who Richard Norton is. He's kind of a legend, honestly, in martial arts cinema, B cinema.
That's amazing.
So that fight sequence is just brilliant. It goes on for about 4 minutes.
Yeah.
3 to 4 minutes. It's well choreographed. Sword fights to Kais.
The takes are pretty long, too, from what I remember.
And the only time they cut away is when it's a reaction shot to what's going on around him because there's somebody being held hostage.
Yeah.
It stays on the fight and lets the choreograph play.
Yeah.
And that's why the scene works so goddamn well.
Right.
It's so good.
And at this point in Chuck's filmography, I have I can sell you on the movie with one fact. Chuck has a fucking sword in this movie.
And he uses it.
And
And he's really good with the sword.
Yes, not as powerful as his feet.
No, of course not.
But he's good with a sword.
His feet are sharper than a sword.
Yeah, oh yeah.
All right.
God, I wish that was a selling point.
That's what they should have said on the front. Either way, that's all I really want to talk about with the Octagon. It's fun, action pretty much nonstop. I love the ninja training grounds, the scene, the setting.
Yeah.
It's just fun. So
it's a fun one for sure.
Also, one of the guys who goes into the ninja camp in the beginning to train is the killer in Silent Rage.
Oh, crap.
Yes, and we'll talk about Silent Rage soon. But for now, we've got an eye for an eye.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Eye for an eye.
So admittedly, this is one where the plot sort of starts to run into other movies for me. But I do remember this was not the Triad one. This is the one where him and Mako team up.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
I don't remember much about the plot of this movie. Can you take us in on this one?
So the plot is kind of what you know from a Chuck movie.
Same kind of thing.
But what I'm going to focus on is not the plot, but this one has a great cast. Christopher Lee is in it.
Yes.
Like you said, Mako's in it.
Mako's in it.
And then there's somebody else who's in it.
I got you. Motherfucking Shaft is in it.
Yes.
Richard Roundtree's in it.
He's in it.
Yes. So it's got a great supporting cast. Again,
Right.
like a lot of these movies do. Who was the first guy you mentioned? Richard Roundtree?
Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. So Christopher Lee, my only gripe with him is that he's not in the movie enough.
Yeah.
And they reserve him for a fucking stupid twist.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Christopher Lee should have been more of a presence. Eye for an Eye, the main action sequence that really got me erect was the first one where, in the home.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a generic set piece, but it's such a cool action sequence.
Right,
And
yeah.
I think it's the first scene where we really start getting into like what Chuck is all about. Like the action set pieces that make the Chuck movies Chuck movies.
I think this is the one where he first started to come into his own as the man, the myth, the legend that is Chuck Norris.
At least in terms of fights,
right.
Totally.
My favorite scene from this is the final fight where, good God, there's so much going on in that fight sequence.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I think it's about the last 30 minutes of the movie.
For real.
I think it's a really long.
Eye for an Eye is
fight
almost
sequence.
nonstop action.
Yeah, it is.
It really is.
And that's what I want to emphasize about this movie is it is the first one where I hate to say it, but you don't come to a Chuck movie for the plot. You come for great action set pieces.
True.
And this man himself.
Yes.
And that's where it is here.
And that's where it is. Exactly. So I really liked Eye for an Eye, and I loved how Mako and Chuck sort of team up.
Yeah.
You know, Mako's pretty old at this point in terms of his actual age, so he's like in his 50s, but he's got so much charisma all the time.
Yeah.
And him and Chuck literally team up and have some duo action scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're really fun.
The chemistry between them is pretty good.
Yeah,
too.
it makes no sense. Like, it's good, but it shouldn't be, but it just works. And Mako's obviously a better actor than Chuck.
Yeah.
So maybe he carries it a little.
Yeah, I think he does. That's probably what it was. But it's very cool to see. I'm a child of the 2000s. It's very cool to see Aku and Uncle from Avatar mentor Chuck Norris.
That's right.
Amazing.
He did the voice of Aku.
Yes.
From Samurai Jack, right?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure I get my shit
amazing.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
Oh, excellent. That's amazing. All right, so that is Eye for an Eye. All right, so next up we have Silent Rage, which is one of the most uncannily strange Chuck films that exists. So I'll take us in. Silent Rage starts up with a really great horror first-person almost perspective. Not really, but it's a one take that takes like 3 or 4 minutes, and it follows our crazed who's to be the crazed killer. wreaking havoc in this house. But the way the camera is going around the house, it starts like a really good horror movie, I thought. But it is a horror movie, but it's also a Chuck movie.
It feels like two different movies in a sense.
Totally.
And it would have been better if it just kind of went with one or the other.
If Chuck,
you know,
if Chuck wasn't in it and they just stuck to the horror like the stories with the doctors and the reanimating. By the way, it reminds me of the Reanimator because they have a syringe full of liquid.
That's funny because I was going to draw that connection, but I was also going to draw the connection between early Sam Raimi. You know, the shots. It's not full Sam Raimi, but just the camera.
The camera work.
It feels eerie. That's
yes,
what I'm trying
it does.
To say.
The camera work is really good.
Yeah.
I commend the camera work. I think it's great.
It really is.
And when this director, I got his name here, when this director, Michael Miller, is doing the horror stuff, he does it really well.
He does it pretty good.
Now, the way I describe it is this movie starts like a horror film, and then Chuck Norris appears with a great shot with the sun behind him, and is looking up at him. And this is where we get the first view of Texas Ranger Chuck, actually.
Yeah, because he is a Texas Ranger in this, right?
He is a Texas Ranger in a small town. He is a Texas Ranger. And so what this movie really does is it really is like the first half is a horror film with an action sequence that I'm going to talk about in a second. And then Chuck kind of crosses over into the horror film, and then the rest plays out oddly. It's just an odd movie.
This one was weird for me because Chuck is surprisingly absent for a good chunk of the first act, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not there too much.
Which is unheard of for a Chuck movie.
Absolutely.
He's front and center, which is why we watch them. But
yes. Who is focused on is Ron Silver's character.
Yeah.
And the doctor, the crazed doctor that's trying to reanimate this corpse. And so that stuff is interesting. Both good actors, and I really enjoyed. There's a scene where I don't know the main doctor's name, but he's Ron Silver's character's superior, and he's yelling at him, and it's really powerful. He's like, "Get the f*** out of here!" Yeah. And it's like really good acting.
Yeah.
And it's just out of place overall, to be honest. But then we get, in my opinion, one of the best action sequences in any Chuck movie. He and Stephen Furst, the character who plays Stephen Furst, get called to this bar where this gang has come into town and start sort of wreaking havoc. They tie up this bartender. Chuck walks in and obliterates everyone.
In a very Chuck way, I might add.
So many kicks.
he just devastates this bar predominantly with his legs.
Yes.
He just kicks everybody.
Yep.
There's in there a time where he throws a dude into a group of other people.
Yep. And he also throws a dude into the bar, and also throws a dude through glass. So he's throwing people and kicking people.
This bar sequence might be a little bit better than the Code of Silence bar sequence, which we'll get to.
We will.
But that one is...
I agree, though.
Those bar sequences are amazing.
Yeah, and it's like a 4-minute action sequence, and it's just so much funny. I also want to mention this movie has more boobs than any Chuck Norris movie. I had to throw that out because it was noticeable. In the first act, like, every woman on screen is taking out their boobs, and I'm like... Okay, I mean, I'm fine with it, but I had never seen that in the Chuck movie. It was kind of a shock.
It doesn't have anything to do with anything, but you have to wonder, like, what makes this movie have more boobs in it than others? Like, why?
I know why.
Why is that?
Because it's a horror movie.
Oh.
Because horror from the 80s, you have to have boobs.
Yeah. I almost want to see, like, another cut of this movie without Chuck Norris in it to see what the hell was happening.
I agree.
He was on to something.
Yes.
And I like what we got. It's fun, good action set pieces, but man, it looked like he was on to something.
Yes, and it's a little bloated. It's an hour 45. It's a little over long.
Too long for a Chuck movie, but you know, you could scrape off maybe 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't you say?
Yep. I said to you earlier, I don't think any Chuck Norris movie needs to be over 90 minutes.
No.
And the ones that are, you feel it.
My mom even said that, and she does not like 80s action movies, but she's on to something.
Absolutely.
I hate to say it, but the brain span of a man watching those movies, the time, it's not that much,
Very small.
And I'm guilty of that. I don't want to see...
It's like if I want to watch a horror movie, I want to watch a horror movie.
Yeah.
If I'm going to watch a Chuck movie, I want to watch a Chuck movie. This one seems like it would be perfect, but it just isn't.
Right.
And that's okay. It's still fun. That is... Silent Rage. Next up, we have 1982. A director named James Fargo gave us Forced Vengeance.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so this one, I gotta be honest, I watched years and years ago. I remember some scenes for it, which I will bring up, but I want you to take us in and just lay down who Chuck is playing. It's kind of unique for a Chuck movie.
It is. So this one is unique because he plays a Chicago cop as opposed to a Texas Ranger cop.
A city cop.
But he dresses like a Texas cop as well. Like, he has a suit. Every scene, he has a cowboy hat on.
Yeah.
And he has a white tailored suit. So it looks like they're trying to be Vegas, but it's still Chuck. So he has the cowboy hat on.
Yeah, I guess Silent Rage set that trend. Like, Texas Ranger, Chuck Norris, even in Chicago.
Yeah. And the description for this movie is basically all you need. Somebody threatens Chuck's friends, and he goes after them.
Don't do that.
They just so happen to be in Hong Kong, and that's where he goes. He just starts messing people up in Hong Kong.
Yeah. And that's really what makes this film unique is the setting.
Yeah. He
It's
goes
on location.
to the bad guys, which is kind of interesting.
Yes, and it's shot, as far as it looks, on location. Like, they went overseas.
Yes.
And it stands out for that. Now, one of the coolest action sequences, which is really brief, is a silhouetted action sequence. So you got a silhouetted bad guy and Chuck, who takes off the hat, the silhouette, which is so funny.
Yeah.
And then they have about a 30-second fisticuff. It's a long take, pretty much, but it's so cool because you got this neon lit sign.
Right.
And it's just, you got this neon lit sign and this silhouetted fight, which I think was the first time we'd ever see something like that.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Didn't Blade 2 do that again?
And I think Blade 2 did something, it did something similar with that giant light at the end of the film.
Yeah, that's
And that's
right.
when, in my opinion, Blade 2, Blade gets super rubbery and starts like jumping around and it's obvious CG.
Right.
But either way, it's a really cool scene in Forced Vengeance that I think is one of the more stylized action sequences that we'd get out of a Chuck movie.
In his filmography, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the film, like we were saying, is sort of just him like chasing people through like Chinatown, like Hong Kong, like downtown Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But it's cool because it's cultured and it's on location, and you're seeing Chuck out of his element for the first time.
Yeah. And it kind of shows during the movie, honestly. It kind of shows that he's not really in Texas or in America, per se.
Fish out of water.
It shows that he's a fish out of water. That's what makes this one stand out. It's not my favorite Chuck movie, but it's one you should see. It's pretty exciting.
It's an important one, at least, because it pushes Chuck out of his comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I think it's a pretty entertaining movie as well. Check out Forced Vengeance, guys.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so next up we have Lone Wolf McQuade, which is in this awesome Chuck Norris Total Attack pack. I'm not sure if this is still in print, but this is coveted. I love this set. Yeah, it's got we'll go over it as we go. But Lone Wolf McQuade in 1983 was directed by Steve Carver. Now, Steve Carver also directed Eye for an Eye a couple years earlier with Chuck. Yeah. So obviously they had a pretty solid relationship.
Right.
And Lone Wolf McQuade is the movie, in my opinion, that turns Carlos Norris into motherfucking Chuck Norris.
Oh, I agree. This is, in my opinion, the quintessential Chuck movie.
I agree.
A Texas Ranger. The first 20 minutes are the epitome of fun. It's so over the top.
Yes.
You know, it's Chuck being Chuck.
Yep. And I think the lore, a lot of like the jokes in the lore, come from that first 20 minutes.
I'd argue
no one could hit him.
It's true. They were shooting at him, but they literally could not hit him. But you watch it, you're like, oh, it's Chuck. Of course they can't hit him.
Exactly. And the funniest scene for me ever is when, in the beginning, when he's standing on like that cliff, and he's just standing there, and the sun's blacking him out, and they're shooting him. He should be a sitting duck, but they can't hit him. And he's not trying to dodge or trying to run out of the way. He's just like standing there in defiance.
Yeah, but then
it's so funny.
And then he pulls out a gun and then just nails some people.
Easily. 5 bullets, 5 dead men.
Yeah.
And he was saving people in the beginning, right? There was like a hostage, hostage situation.
There was a hostage situation, and he was like, J.J. McQuade, come out with your hands up.
Yeah.
This is my favorite Chuck Norris movie. No Chuck Norris movie technically should be a 5 out of 5, but I don't give a shit. This is one of my favorites of all time. I love Lone Wolf McQuade. This man has a pet wolf in there.
He does, and don't they kill him?
Yeah, they do.
And don't fucking kill anybody who Chuck cares about, including dogs. John Wick, we learned that from John Wick, but we learned it from Lone Wolf McQuade first.
Exactly. I was going to draw that comparison. It's like John Wick, but a step up.
It is. In absurdity.
Not maybe a step up in quality, but
absurdity.
Chuck would own a wolf. John Wick would own a
Yeah, of course. Of course. So also David Carradine is the villain in this.
Yes.
I'd say one of the biggest, most high-profile villains he ever got in a movie. And that ending fight, that ending action sequence is just a blast.
It's a lot of like there's explosions, there's karate going on.
There's gunfire.
I think it has it all. That's why it's my favorite one.
And what are the names of Kaio and Jackson, his team that he puts together to take out the bad? Because he can't do it all himself. I mean, he could. Yeah. But he actually had some help in this one from the police department.
They have some pretty good chemistry, too.
They do. Especially Jackson and him. I thought had really good chemistry.
They have some really good chemistry. And it's in this movie, it's interesting because you almost wonder why there's such a... We'll talk about this in a second, but there is a slight career change after this. Because he's almost trying to do a man with no name situation in this one.
Totally.
And they're trying to set him up with that. His films don't take a campier turn, but it starts out that way.
And Orion put this film out.
Orion, that's right.
Orion, I'm not sure if it was his first film with Orion, but Orion seemed to really pump out some of the better Chuck movies, and we'll get to that in a moment. But one last thing I wanted to mention, at least, about Lone Wolf McQuade, is the scene with the truck. You know what I'm talking about? Where he's buried, and he literally drives his truck out of the ground, and he's got like a Coca-Cola or whatever. It's like product placement.
I'm pretty sure he just sips it. No.
Is that what happened?
It was a beer.
It was a beer
specific to that time frame.
Okay, it was a beer.
So I think I did some research on this because that beer is no longer published.
Interesting. I thought it was a soda.
It was a marketing campaign that was if you guys know, let us know what kind of beer it was.
Please do.
It was a beer that was popular in the 80s.
Yes.
And he just like.
Yeah,
he just
no problem,
out.
And he just literally, it's physically impossible what he did, but that's okay because it's a Chuck Norris movie.
Yes,
it's a brilliant scene, ridiculous nonetheless. But Lone Wolf McQuade, I would say, you said it's your favorite.
It's my favorite.
Honestly,
easily.
As of right now, it's tied with my favorite. That's what I'm going to say. It's tied with my favorite, and we'll talk about my other favorite coming up soon, but for now, that is frickin' Lone Wolf McQuade.
Lone Wolf McQuade.
Next up is actually from the same set, the Total Attack Pack.
Great set.
Missing in Action from 1984, which marks his debut with the infamous, inimitable Cannon Group Pictures.
Yes.
So this is his first movie with them, and also gets a really good director, a horror director actually, mostly, Joseph Zito. Joseph Zito did a couple movies called The Prowler, which is a great slasher.
I've yet to see that.
You gotta see it. It's great. It has Tom Savini effects. It's brutal.
I gotta see that.
And he also did, we were talking about this earlier, but he also did Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter. Part 4.
Is that the one where he gets blown up at the end by everybody?
Which one? What movie?
Final Chapter. Friday the 13th. Everyone, the CIA, everyone just blows up.
No, that's not the Jason. I think you're talking about Jason Goes to Hell.
Okay.
Yeah, but Chapter 4 is actually one of my favorite Jason movies, but we're not talking about Jason. Joseph Zito would direct Chuck Norris in Missing in Action, which is quite literally Chuck Norris's Rambo movies.
Yeah, no, it is.
It is.
Plot-wise,
POWs. POWs.
Well, I would argue that these in the franchise plot get better as they go.
I agree. Missing in Action 1 is probably my least favorite of the three. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But it is, so Chuck Norris is back in America, and he gets word of POWs, and of course Chuck has to go rescue these POWs. This is where like the real jingoism comes in, the real patriotism comes in with these Chuck movies. This whole series is supremely jingoistic. I'm not saying that as a negative thing, but they just are of their time. It's Cold War era.
It's unapologetically America.
It is unapologetic. You said it perfectly. It is America.
Yeah,
and it gets more America as it goes on. And we'll talk about it. But Missing in Action, again, it's just sort of his Rambo. Great action sequences with Chuck with a giant 50 caliber machine gun in the boat where he's just bucking dudes down. It's awesome. And these movies are action heavy as hell.
Yeah.
I mean, even more action than the Rambo movies in a lot of ways. They're just non-stop action, great blood squibs, great brutal violence.
Oh, yeah.
Joseph Zito always shot violence really well, and this movie is no exception. But I really don't have much else to say about Missing in Action. It's a fun movie,
It's
but
solid. Go watch it.
Go watch it. It's a solid movie, especially if you want to see Rambo with Chuck Norris, and who doesn't want to see that? Go watch Missing in Action. Next up is Missing in Action 2, actually. So he had a 1-2, Missing in Action 1 and 2 came out a year apart, and Missing in Action 2 is actually a prequel.
Yes.
But it's literally more of the same.
The Beginning. Missing in Action 2, The
Beginning.
Yes.
And it takes place during the war.
Yes.
Where, correct me if I'm wrong, because my details might be a little off, but it takes place during the war, during the Vietnam War,
Yes.
and they're in the jungles and they get captured. His platoon gets captured.
Yes.
And forced into a camp. And Soon Tek Oh, actually, so Soon Tek Oh, who is a great actor, was actually the ninja who was knocking people off and good guys were black.
Oh.
He comes back as the villain, I want to say Inspector Lin?
Yeah.
Or Imperial... He was the main villain in Missing in Action 2, and he does a great job. You hate him. You love to hate him in this movie. And they're torturing Chuck.
He's such an evil son of a bitch.
Oh, yeah.
For the 80s. Like, you want to see him get the worst thing happen to him. He's that type of guy. I think this one may have the best story for me because they are captured.
I might agree.
And it is a B movie, but there are moments of realism trapped in here somewhere.
And I remember getting emotional.
Yes.
At points.
No, me too.
Yeah.
And
because his friends are dying.
The final fight sequence was one of the scenes where I got emotional because Chuck's beat. The only movie where you probably see Chuck wounded and struggling.
Yeah.
I might add.
Yeah.
He's wounded. He's beaten down, and the bad guy's just mocking him. Yeah. And then it's a classic stereotype, but he somehow finds the strength to kick his ass.
Of course. And it's just so typical of the 80s, right?
Yeah.
It's like the guy's down for the count, but he finds the strength. Yeah, I need to rewatch this one because it admittedly was one I didn't have time to rewatch.
Yeah.
But it was one that really stuck with me, and it's actually, you know what, my favorite Missing in Action movie.
I think it is mine too.
Yeah, and I like, we'll talk about Braddock, but Missing in Action 2, another really good one. Probably one of the stronger plots because you really feel... Chuck doesn't say much as usual, taciturn, as he always is, but even more so in this. And he lets his emotions work. And he's pretty good with his face in this one.
He really is.
And he's pretty good with his face in general, expressiveness.
Yes.
But when his friends start dying, and you feel what he's feeling. And it's actually, I know it's a B movie, I get it, it's a canon movie, but still, it's effective.
Yes,
yeah.
Moments of truth in it for sure that shine.
Absolutely. That is Missing in Action 2. Next up is another Orion picture.
Yes.
Directed by probably the most competent director, honestly, that Chuck has ever worked with.
Easily.
This is an Oscar Award winning, or Oscar Award nominated, I believe. I believe he got nominated for The Fugitive. I think. That is Andrew Davis.
Yes.
Who also action fans would know from films like The Package with Gene Hackman, but more so Under Siege.
Yes.
With Steven Seagal.
Did he do Under Siege 2?
No, some schmuck did Under Siege 2.
I was about to say, yeah.
Under Siege 2 is okay, but it's not Under Siege 1.
Yeah.
Anyway, Code of Silence is the other movie that is tied with Lone Wolf McQuade as my favorite.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. Code of Silence, first of all, has one of the best fucking soundtracks. The score is so moody, atmospheric, smooth jazz, and I want to shout out Jason Michael Frank is the composer's name, who did a bunch of movies that we all know and love from the 80s.
Right.
He also did Showdown in Little Tokyo, but his work here is so moody that the theme goes boom, 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 boom.
It's almost like
very good.
It's like if a Taxi Driver score was in the 80s.
That's good.
Yeah, no, Taxi Driver for 80s action.
Yes, I agree with that. Not quite the skill level of Bernstein, but
of course not.
Still, I mean, it's still amazing. But Code of Silence is such a badass movie. Not only does it have probably the best, in my opinion, finishing final action sequence.
I agree with you.
Which goes on, and Chuck has the assistance of like this RoboCop sort of robot thing,
which is teased expertly in the first half of the movie.
It's placed perfectly.
Yeah, it's
so
like
that you don't think it's gonna happen.
I literally, when I was watching it, I was like, "Oh, what's that? That looks cool." Which is what exactly what it was supposed to do.
Exactly what Davis wanted to do.
Exactly.
And so the ending action sequence is just incredible. Henry Silva, another great villain. Henry Silva, I thought, was excellent. Almost, probably, you know what? Maybe better than Carradine as a villain.
Probably.
Just because Silva has that skeezy look.
Yeah.
You know?
I think he's a little bit of a better actor, too.
Yes, he's a better actor. He's definitely a better actor. So Code of Silence is very, very different than any other Chuck movie.
Yes.
It's more of a crime thriller with action elements.
Yes.
And the crime thriller stuff, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Chuck works so well as a Chicago police officer who is trying to uncover uncover corruption.
Yes.
In the very beginning, Ralph, the actor Ralph Foodie, you may not know that name, but you absolutely know that face because he was in Home Alone. You've seen Home Alone?
Yes, of course.
Of course. So he is the character in the mob movie in Home Alone.
Yeah.
And he's the one who goes, "Merry Christmas, you filthy animal."
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. And a Happy New Year.
He didn't have much work, but he is the crooked cop in this. Essentially, he ends up killing a kid by mistake in the very beginning of the movie. And it's not a spoiler or anything. It's right in the beginning. And that really is the catalyst for the rest of the film. Ralph Foodie's character is trying to cover it up.
Yes.
You know, he's telling his partner who doesn't like what's going on, you know, this is how it is. You know, it was an accident. You saw he had a gun.
Yeah.
He plants the gun on the kid. Corrupt cop.
It's almost like a Training Day scene where it's like, this is how it is in the real world. It's not happy-go-lucky cops. You gotta be a wolf to catch the wolf.
That's exactly right.
And well Chuck's like, obviously, he's like, absolutely not. I'm not having it.
And as soon as he encounters Ralph Foodie right in the beginning, Chuck looks back down the hallway and just it zooms in or it cuts to his face and he's just like, he knows something's up.
Yes.
He could smell it.
Yes, he really
And so
could.
the whole film is him trying to get evidence to uncover the fact that they are trying to cover this murder up. And there's more to it. I don't want to go too deep into it, but man, Chuck, you feel what Chuck's going through in this movie.
It's a well-crafted plot, and that's not the case for any Chuck movie, really.
Exactly.
It has layers. There's things going on.
Yep.
And I mentioned it earlier, but this bar sequence is almost as good as Silent Rage.
Talk about it a bit.
If not better. So this bar sequence actually is so visceral, in my opinion, man.
It is.
Like, there's a scene where Chuck gets held down, and, you know, as I'm watching it the first time, I'm like, oh, you better watch his legs. They're exposed. And he starts nailing people with his legs.
Yeah.
And it happens.
These guys haven't seen a Chuck Norris movie.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I've been marathoning him for a week. I was like, his legs, rookie mistake. Come on.
Rookie mistake.
And then he's just flipping people. There is in this one a group of people where he almost suplexes a dude over into a group of other people.
Yeah.
And it's just,
oh
my
scene.
God, it's the most real action sequence I think he's ever done.
That's the thing. This movie doesn't take the action in a goofy direction.
It's not a campy film at all.
The action is incidental.
Yes.
It sort of falls into the action.
Right, and that's partly credit to the director. Like he is easily the most competent director Chuck's ever worked with. I love Steve Carver. Don't get me wrong, but this one is really amazing.
Yeah, I think Carver's the second best, and I think
so.
Yeah, and I think Andrew Davis. Obviously, he would go on to make like The Fugitive, which is just a huge movie.
Yes.
He wouldn't do much after that, unfortunately, but I'll take it for Code of Silence, Under Siege, and The Fugitive.
That's a solid entry.
That's all you need. And you got to see The Package if you haven't seen The Package.
I need to see The Package.
It's a really good action flick with, I'm drawing a blank on the other character, but Gene Hackman and another younger dude. I want to say Ray Liotta, but it's not. One thing I wanted to say about Code of Silence, I had no idea until I read the Wikipedia. This was supposed to be, in 1980, this was drafted as a Dirty Harry movie.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. So isn't that funny? 5 years later, Orion, I guess, I don't know who picked up the script, but they made a Chuck Norris. I guess it's sort of, when you think about it, it does kind of play like Dirty Harry.
You could see Eastwood in this role.
The corrupt cop, you could see Eastwood in
now
this
that
role.
I've seen it, I can't, but you could, examining, you could see that being Harry Callahan.
Absolutely.
Easily.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to mention that little bit of trivia. Either way, Code of Silence, I don't have much else to say. I mean, I could gush about it, but I don't want to sit here and talk about it forever.
I will say, this is one that, first time I watched it, it was a 3.5 because it's not stereotypical Chuck.
Yeah.
Next time I watched it, it's a 4. The next time I watch it, it might become a 4.5.
It gets better and better.
It gets better and better.
Ages like wine.
Yes.
So Code of Silence, like I said, tied for me personally with Lone Wolf McQuade as my favorite.
It's awesome.
It's so badass. Next up is probably, if I had to think about it, it would probably be my third favorite Chuck movie. This movie doesn't have the fisticuffs, but oh my god, does it have the guns.
Yes, literally.
Invasion USA. Invasion USA is one of the craziest, most over-the-top 80s action movies. This is the type of movie that gives all 80s action movies that over-the-top label.
Yes.
Because this movie, Chuck Norris pops in and out of nowhere. He's a time... I don't know, he's just jumping all over this town. And he's everywhere these bad guys are. And actually, they draw attention to this because there's a scene where he's like, you can't be everywhere. And he's like, and Chuck Norris is like, well, I could try to be or something, you know? So they make fun of it in a sense. But, I mean, the action is strung together by ridiculous things that oh, yes, absolutely, beautifully. Essentially, the plot is kind of scary, actually. It's during the Cold War. Some of these scenes actually freak me out.
Yeah,
The scene where the land invasion by the Russians.
That's really overwhelming.
It is, and it's a creepy scene. And actually, I think they were trying to say something with that scene.
Yeah.
Hear me out. They're invading the land on a beach. On that beach, there's a young couple, free as hell, having sex, drinking wine, just being free in America.
Yeah.
And I think it's a statement on the encroachment of freedom because
I saw that too.
They execute both of them right there on the beach.
And you know, the scene of the Russians coming in, it's very overwhelming.
Yeah.
The camera kind of pans out and you just see like 1,000 boats approaching and you're like, oh,
it's
shit.
scary, and the music is militant and,
it is.
And creepy.
The score from this one does really stand out for me too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Richard Lynch, another great villain here.
Yes.
Another great villain.
He is great.
He's awesome. And Chuck plays... it takes place in Florida, right? Isn't that right? It takes place in Florida because he's got like the gator or the hovercraft business with his boy.
That's right.
And his place, this guy's place gets obliterated in the beginning, which sends Chuck on his journey to kill every Russian that has invaded America.
Quest for vengeance, if you will.
Against every Russian in the world.
Yeah.
And so this movie has so many ridiculous over-the-top action sequences that are not really based in martial arts, but are based in shooting many different types of weapons.
Right.
MAC-10s. That's his signature one.
Yes.
And by the way, I love that he holds them here, and he's like... Usually, you know, it's like you hold it like this or like that, but he's got them just tucked. Maybe like how you're supposed to.
Yeah, probably. I'd imagine a weapon of that caliber would send you flying backwards.
You'd have to. Right, exactly.
Obviously, it's Chuck we're dealing with here, so that doesn't apply, but you know.
The guns take heed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this movie actually takes place during Christmas.
Yeah.
It's a Christmas action movie.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
And so one of the most effective scenes for me is the suburban attack scene. Yeah. Richard Lynch rolls to this suburban neighborhood, another attack on freedom, and starts literally blowing up houses that children just went in to have dinner.
Right.
And it's like, holy shit! And it's an obvious statement during the Cold War of the Russians are trying to kill your children. This movie's very patriotic in that sense.
Yes.
And Joseph Zito directed this one as well.
He did. That's right. I always forget about that.
This movie has car chases.
He does over-the-top action so well, by the way.
Incredibly well.
Joseph Zito is so good at that.
Have you seen Lundgren's Red Scorpion?
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
That movie is so over the top. It came out in like 88, 89. It's
Zito
Lundgren's best. Zito did that.
Zito, yeah, okay.
Zito did that. I wish he did more action. He was great at horror, too. Just visceral horror movies and action. But he knocks it out of the park. Now, again, there are so many things to attack this film about because of its lack of plot. It has no plot.
Yes.
It's action scene to action scene. Chuck arrives, dismantles the plan, on to the next.
It is like the Rocky IV, if you will, of Chuck's career.
It is the Rocky IV.
If you can even make that comparison. It's the most unapologetic Chuck Norris movie. You don't even really get a significant backstory of why he's a badass.
Nope.
Because if this was like somebody not Chuck Norris, you'd be like, why does this guy have an arsenal of weapons in his basement?
Yeah.
But because it's Chuck Norris, you just kind of go along with it.
It's acceptable.
But
Yeah.
Like I was saying with Missing in Action, there are moments of like really hard-hitting scenes in this one that really
I agree.
kind of drive it forward.
And
they're not many, but they work very well.
Right, and it's a canon film, right?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's a canon film, and it's the most canon of all canon films. And honestly, the serious moments mostly deal with the Russians trying to take American freedom away,
Right.
and that still obviously resonates. I think that'll always resonate. But the dichotomy between that and the absurdity of the action, I love the scene where the bad guys plant a bomb on the side of a school bus with children who are leaving the city because it's dangerous, and Chuck tracks down the bus, takes the bomb off, plants it on the car, and says a one-liner. Now, this movie is also known for one of his best one-liners. You know what it is?
Yeah, it's time to die, right?
It's time to die.
Yeah.
How many times do you say it? Like 4 times? And the last one is just so glorious because he's got the bazooka, and he's like, it's time to die.
And then that music hits, just like, chee!
It's time.
And then, boom, and he blows the dude out of the window. And if you look closely, you could see a leg.
Yeah. He hits one man with a bazooka.
It's one man.
One man with a bazooka.
Close range.
Yeah.
Close range.
My favorite one-liner in this movie was when you're watching it and you think the Russians are one step ahead, and all of a sudden the camera pans out and Chuck's just pointing a kick gun at his head.
So good.
And he
yeah.
just goes, "Time's up."
Time's up! Oh, it's so simple. But it's so good. Again, Chuck Norris is super serious in this movie. The severity in his face just exudes from the screen.
Didn't work, huh? Yeah, it will.
Iconic as hell
really good
image.
one.
The
Yes.
beard. Everything is there.
That's
in this
all
movie.
in a mall, right? The final act is...
not the final one.
Okay.
It's the middle action scene. Yeah.
I forget because the middle action, basically, the action doesn't stop
No.
once it starts, if you will.
I'd say towards the end of the first act is when
Yeah.
it starts, and it never stops.
It never stops.
And that shopping mall action sequence is crazy.
Yeah, it
He's
is.
killing innocent people, are kicking the bucket all over
That's
the
where
place.
this one comes from.
And
Yeah.
that's where he drives his Jeep into the shopping mall. And oh, it's so good because he drives it in the shopping mall, glass shatters, and then he slams into one of the dudes with a machine gun.
And he gets out of the car pretty nonchalantly, all things considered. That's the funniest shit to me. He's just like, it's like he's done this before.
And he has. It's guys.
So it's like, to him, it's a Tuesday.
It's a. Dude,
But
we could
yeah.
talk about Invasion USA more all day, but we have to move on to the next. Guys, one of the most fun Chuck movies,
Easily.
Invasion USA. Next up, we have Delta Force. Delta Force, you're going to take us in on here because I have mixed feelings about this one.
Okay. Delta Force is kind of like Missing in Action, except he's playing like a Green Beret Special Forces. This movie has some great action set pieces. It's not as tight as some of the other ones. Why is this not your
Well,
favorite one?
okay, so I don't hate this film. I like this movie, but I think it's for one, it's almost 2 hours. It's too long. But here's why it's 2 hours. The first part of the film, if not the first act, is a hostage situation.
Yes.
So a hostage situation happens. I'm not gonna pretend that I remember the nationalities of the terrorists, but they hijack a plane, and to me, this movie becomes a disaster movie because you have all these characters,
okay.
these colorful characters around
Yeah.
that are pretty fun to watch, and it carries the movie. And you have these terrorists who are holding them hostage, and then Chuck comes in when the cavalry's called.
Yes.
Right, and then
Delta
it turns
Force.
into a hostage situation where
Yes.
they're kind of get the guys out,
Yes.
Save the people, and then the rest of the movie is him just taking them out.
Yes.
Right, and so. I like the movie, but I do feel like it's overlong. I also feel like it's 2 different movies. Again, Chuck doesn't come in till quite a ways. We see him. Am I right about that? Or am I wrong?
I think he comes in pretty quickly.
Pretty early?
But I don't think he does much until maybe the second act.
Okay.
So I think the Delta
Yeah,
Force...
because it's a hostage situation.
Yes, I think the Delta Force comes in to introduce the Delta Force.
Yes.
But I don't think he does things until well into the second act.
And maybe that's more so what I'm remembering. And again,
Yes.
it's been a while since I've seen it. I also want to mention one of my, he's very little known. He wasn't in many movies, and he died very, very early. I don't know if you know Steve James.
Yes,
Steve James, it was awesome. He was
do,
in American Ninja, one of my favorites.
Yes.
And he was also in this movie, and he pops up in another Chuck movie in a couple down the road here. Hero and the Terror. I'll just say it. Hero and the Terror he pops up in too. Steve James is a great martial arts actor who never really got the time to shine. Unfortunately, he was taken from us way too soon. But he pops up in this as one of the Delta Force teammates. So Delta Force,
he's really good in it too. He's really good.
He has so much presence.
Yes.
He's so fun to watch.
He has a huge screen presence. He always stood out to me in this movie.
Yeah, he lights up the screen, and I wish he got more leading roles. I would have loved to see him in Action Jackson.
Oh yeah.
I think Carl Weathers did great, but
Yes.
I think Action Jackson would have, or Steve James would have killed it.
Yeah,
it would have been more physical.
Yes.
But either way, that is Delta Force, another canon movie. Again, I enjoy it. I need to rewatch it clearly because some of my details are screwy.
I do too.
So that's one pretty good movie, Delta Force. All right, guys. So the next one from 1986 is Firewalker. This is Chuck Norris's Indiana Jones ripoff. Yes, that exists, and it's called Firewalker. Now, this is a Canon picture directed by a Canon mainstay. Towards the end, he was an old director at the time, and he passed away in, I think, 90. But his name was J. Lee Thompson, a really good action director who would become one of Canon's go-to guys, actually. He did Death Wish 4, Messenger of Death, and I think 2 or 3 other Bronson action movies.
Yeah.
So, good, competent director here. Now, Firewalker, I hate to say it, it's one of my least favorite Chuck Norris movies.
I agree with you.
Now, that's not to say I don't have fun with it, because I do.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think it's too long. The movie starts up with an incredible scene.
I wish it was the entire movie. Just stuff like that.
Tone,
Yes.
yeah.
Because Chuck's so... You see him smile in this, which if you watch Chuck movies, doesn't
Doesn't happen.
He's very
got charm.
loose. Yeah, he has chemistry with
Louis Gossett Jr.
Louis Gossett Jr.
Yep.
Yeah, the chemistry's really well done there.
I agree, and even the female lead, I forget who it is, forgive me.
She hasn't done much.
She hasn't done much, but she was really good too, and all 3 of them have really good chemistry. Yes. I really thought so. And there's not really a love interest going on. It's just more of like a let's find this treasure.
Yes.
And that's what the movie is about. It's literally just a treasure hunt.
Yes.
The girl comes in, she's a reporter, she has some news about a treasure. Chuck doesn't believe her, but as time goes on, more and more info comes out, and he's like, alright, well, let's go find this treasure.
Yes.
But the opening sequence we have to talk about because it's the best scene in the movie, I think.
It is. It really is.
So you have Chuck Norris and Louis Gossett Jr.'s, their banter is great.
Yeah, it really is.
They're tied down in the sand. Hot sun beating down on them. And you really feel it because the sweat's pouring.
Yes.
You got sweaty guys all over the
almost
place.
Spaghetti westernish.
It is almost spaghetti western.
Almost.
Almost. So they're tied down in the sand, burning up. And you've got the bad guy, the big bad guy, who has this about, I don't know, minute-long monologue where he's saying, you guys, he's basically telling Chuck how they're going to die. You're going to dehydrate and you're going to... And then at the end, Chuck goes in perfect timing, yeah, but you're still bald. And it's the fucking funniest shit. It's so... You would never guess that he would have said something like that.
No.
And it's just the funniest attack on this guy's physical appearance.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he smashes it. Really cool plot device, actually. The bad guy puts a Pepsi, a product placement, in Chuck's hand, and Chuck is able to break the glass with one hand and then break out of the bonds. Best scene in the movie.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that because it's so...
Forgettable. The movie's forgettable.
I hate to say it, but I agree with Roger with it, what he said.
What did
It's
he say?
a non-Spielbergian remake without the magic.
Oh, God, it has no magic.
It has no magic.
It has some charm, but it doesn't have magic.
And it bums me out, man,
Yeah.
because Chuck's so loose. He acts like he's having a good time in
I
this.
know.
I may have been too rash.
I know.
And John Rhys-Davies is in this, if you don't know who that is. Gimli.
Yeah.
He plays Gimli, if nobody knows who that is.
Gimli, any Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Sala.
Sala.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
He's in this, and he's pretty fun.
Awesome
but
to see.
Everybody in it does They try so hard to make something of this movie, but it's just not. It's pretty incoherent.
It's like the ingredients are there to make the cake, but they were not implemented correctly.
Yes.
Now I want to say John Rhys Davis's character is actually pretty deep and interesting because he's a white dude who seizes power over this little tribe or civilization, and Chuck Norris has a great line actually when they depart. This is like another really good part of the film. Great line when they depart, and it basically says that he's doomed.
Yeah.
You know, the power has consumed him.
Right. And
he's addicted to it. It reminds me of a film called The Man Who Would Be King. You got to see it if you haven't, but it's a Michael Caine film from the 70s. It's amazing, but same kind of thing where a white man from the West finds that he could seize power easily over certain types of people, and it's a big statement on power and how it corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know I'm getting deep on Firewalker, but that character, John Rhys Davis's character, was conflicted. And man, so like I said, it had the right ingredients.
It goes to show the movie has so much potential. I feel.
Yeah, it does.
Because, like you said, you want to hear more about Rhys Davies' character. You want to see more chemistry between Chuck and Lou Gazette.
A villain. There's no villain.
There's no villain. It's like they focus on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And it's too little, too late.
And the action isn't very good.
It's not.
It's not very good.
It's not.
The direction here, I like J. Lee Thompson's work, but it's just not very good. And I think that may be where the fault lies.
I feel like this one really was the result of a studio trying to push out another Indiana Jones-esque movie.
Yeah.
But it just, if you're not, nobody's Spielberg, nobody can replicate his films. No. Spielberg is a master of the craft.
Yes.
And I think that's what happened here. I'm not 100%.
I think you're on something. And I love Indiana Jones ripoffs, and I plan to do a video on that in the future. Ironically enough, I mentioned King Solomon's Mines. J. Lee Thompson directed that as well. J. Lee Thompson directed an Indiana Jones ripoff, King Solomon's Mines, in 1985, and then did an Indiana Jones ripoff in 1986 with Firewalker.
Yeah.
So two in a row, and both Cannon films. So you see, Cannon was really trying to push an agenda here.
Is that other one good? Solomon's Tribe?
It's King Solomon's Mines is better than Firewalker.
Okay.
Yeah, it's better, but it's not very good. Richard Chamberlain doing his best Indiana Jones.
There you go. I think they had an agenda.
Yeah, so it was a forced movie, and it feels like a forced movie.
I really wish it was better, though.
Me too. But I'm happy to have this Olive Films release. I'm at least happy to have this in the collection.
Me too.
So,
I have it on Blue as well.
It's awesome. So at least to have it on Blue. That is Firewalker. Next up, we have Missing in Action 3.
Braddock.
Braddock.
Missing in Action 3.
That's right. It was doing because you have First Blood, you have Rambo First Blood Part 2, and then you have Rambo 3. So they were trying to do similar things. I'm sorry, Braddock isn't as cool of a name as fucking Rambo.
No,
but
it's not.
I'll take it. Missing in Action 3. The plot, real quick, is somewhat interesting because he finds out in one of the best Chuck Norris scenes, I think, at least dialogue-wise, ever. He finds out that his wife and his kid are still alive, and the agency has been keeping it from him. The look on his face when he finds this out goes so severe and sullen. You feel it. Little John, as he's leaving the office, says, "Hey, I don't want you stepping on any toes."
Yeah.
Chuck turns around, approaches him, and says,
I don't step on toes, Little John. I step on necks.
golden line. So that's what I wanted to take us in with that because that's really the introduction of the movie. But then, of course, it's more the same. He gets sent back. Here, go ahead, pick it up. He gets sent back to the jungles.
He gets sent back to the jungles.
Yeah.
But this time, he's going to save his wife.
Yes, and child.
Yes, son. And
son.
This one's funny for me because you don't buy at all that Chuck's son is Asian.
No,
and
exactly.
His wife is Asian.
Yeah, you just don't buy it.
Yeah, and but I will say there is a plot choice that I'm not going to spoil in this movie that I did not see coming.
Yeah. And
I was like, holy shit, they went there. That's
well, f it. Spoilers. Say it.
His wife dies.
Yes.
And the bad guy just kind of in an anticlimactic way, which is probably accurate to how war happens.
Absolutely.
Just shoots his wife. And he's obviously ticked off.
Oh, he's pissed.
Yes.
Like I said, don't hurt anybody that he cares about.
Yes.
And his wife and him do have a scene of intimacy, which adds to her death being a little bit more effective. This movie was directed by Aaron Norris. The first Aaron Norris directed Chuck Norris film.
Yes.
Aaron Norris is his younger brother.
Yes.
He produced films earlier on in Chuck Norris's career, but this is the first one he directed.
Oh, he handles action so perfectly.
He really does.
He knows his brother really well.
Yes, they work together in tandem very, very well.
Yes.
So so there's this mission that's holding orphaned children. So these films are supremely jingoistic and supremely patriotic.
Yes.
This one is even more so because, of course, you have to save Amerasian kids. So in Vietnam, there were a bunch of soldiers, this is real life, a bunch of soldiers that were unfortunately raping and having sex, unconsented most likely, with a lot of women in Vietnam, and these women were having their kids.
Yes.
And so these kids were being thrown into being lost in Vietnam, and a lot of them ended up dying, and it's f***ed up history. So this movie plays on that. Chuck Norris is trying to save children.
Yeah.
How can you not cheer for that, you know? By the way, the theme song. Freedom, 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 freedom.
I can see the love of freedom, freedom. Oh, freedom, freedom, freedom.
That is, I think for 5 minutes you see them flying in a chopper.
Yeah.
Coming home from the war, supposedly. And this song just is blasting. And it's funny because there's not really, it's kind of like, in my opinion, some of the lesser Star Wars movies where nothing is happening.
Yeah.
But the John Williams score is just
still
blasting.
booming. Oh, yeah.
And so in this movie, Chuck's just literally like this for 5 minutes. He's looking out of the
Well, this guy's
chopper.
just screaming about freedom.
I can see the love of freedom.
Oh, it's just such a funny, patriotic. It's so of its time.
So
of its time.
This one's funny to me because I think it is the most unapologetically America one.
Absolutely.
But I do think there are moments in this movie that make it one of my favorites because of the deep storytelling that's interwoven into it.
And because of the stakes.
Yes.
I mean, kids are at stake here.
Yes,
so
kids.
He's trying to save these kids, smuggle these kids out of Nam. Obviously, the Vietnamese army doesn't want that, and he's literally fighting against the Vietnamese army almost by himself, pretty much, in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't have like an uprising of people to help him out, like in the second film. It's more like the first film where he's just kind of one-man army kind of thing, which is Chuck at his best.
Yes.
So I don't really have much else to say about Missing in Action. I like Missing in Action quite a bit.
Yes.
Better than the first one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes.
They all get better and better, I think.
Yeah, I still think 2 is my favorite.
Yeah.
But 3 is just like on par.
3 is
honestly.
solid. Yeah.
But 2 has more emotional depth, I think, because of what Chuck sees happening to his squadron.
It does.
And so he feels responsible for it. It's just more to it, and the villain is better.
Yes.
The villain in 3 is not as memorable.
Yeah, he's very cookie cutter.
Very cookie cutter in
Except
terms of
for
like
one scene, but he's very cookie cutter.
evil brown guy during the 80s. Yeah, that's he's very cookie cutter, and so essentially Missing in Action 3, also known as Braddock. I like the movie quite a bit. And, on to the next, right?
Yeah.
On to next.
Let's get it.
All right, guys. We are at the end of the 70s, 80s Chuck Norris filmography.
Yes.
1988, he would not have a film in 1989. He would do Delta Force 2 in 90.
Yes.
But 1988's Hero and the Terror is his last 80s film and my least favorite.
Yes.
Take us in.
All right. So, no Chuck movies should ever be boring. That's a simple fact. This is the only Chuck movie that I don't think I ever have a desire to watch again.
I agree.
I can't necessarily tell you what was bad about it. No,
I could.
I can. I can. It's just, I appreciate what they were trying to do, and there are small parts of the film that do work for me, but it's like everything they want to set up gets flushed down the toilet.
I agree. It's just, okay, so where I think this film really falters is its B storylines. Him and his wife, his pregnant wife, why?
Yeah.
His wife never is in danger.
I didn't give a shit.
Why? There's even a scene where she walks into the hotel where the killer is hiding out, She goes to the bathroom, but Chuck stops her before. Why? Let her go into the bathroom. Let there be some tension.
Yeah.
Let Chuck save her.
Yeah.
In fact, kill her.
Yeah.
So that Chuck has a reason to do what he's doing.
Yes, I mean, I would have felt so much more if that would have happened, but this movie is just, it feels like a brainless 80s thriller.
Crime
thriller. Yeah, which we've seen Chuck do good thrillers, so that's why
Code of Silence.
I was really excited for Hero and the Terror,
Yeah.
and it just does not work.
It doesn't work. So I'll take us in with the plot real quick. So the plot, it starts out with Chuck Norris having a bad dream about a bad guy he put away, this giant man. I forget the actor's name. The Terror.
Yes.
Chuck is the hero, this guy's the Terror. It's based on a book, actually, a novel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the Terror is this hulking guy. Chuck gets him. He doesn't kill him. He sends him to a mental asylum, essentially. This dude does some really actually cool stuff with chemistry.
I agree.
And he breaks his way out of jail with some filament that he makes from gunpowder or something. It's kind of interesting. And I'm sure it's even more interesting in the book. But
Probably is,
probably.
yeah.
So this guy breaks out, and of course Chuck feels it. He feels that this guy is broken out, and so it automatically affects him. His wife knows it affects him. And the rest of the movie is the hunt for this killer. Now, this film isn't an action movie.
No.
However, it has in my opinion, a perfectly inconsequential action sequence in the beginning, where he's on the pier, and they're doing a drug bust. What the did that drug bust have to do with the main plot?
I don't know.
I don't think it had anything to do.
I don't know, but
If
I
I'm
wanted
wrong-
to go back to that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
Yeah, because it was one of those things where the studio was like, well, it's a Chuck film, so we need to put in an intense training sequence, by the way, where the most intense one where he's like,
Yeah.
it's so over the top. Well, I'm fine with that.
Sponsored by Total Gym, because I think that's the
Was that
one.
it? Yeah. So that action sequence just has no bearing on the story. It's a fine action sequence. He kicks some guy into the water or whatever. It's okay. But then, honestly, the rest of the movie is a slog. The scenes where they're hunting for the Terror in the theater go on and on and on.
Yeah.
On and on and on.
I
And
thought it was a drag.
you have cops looking under seats for the Terror.
Oh, the cops are so stupid.
Oh my god, it's so unbearably bad. One of my favorite sets in the movie, though, I will say, set pieces, is the final fight.
The roof.
It's not the it is the roof, but there's a part between the roof and the theater.
It doesn't start out. Yeah, I know.
It's like
what
the
you're
saying.
I know
right?
What you're saying. Yes.
Yeah, and that set piece is actually really cool. When it happened, I was like, oh, that's cool. You never see like the how do you say, the attic of a theater.
Yeah.
And so the theater was a beautiful set, at least. Again, Steve James pops up in this as one of the dumbest fucking cops in existence. Chuck Norris is a good friend of his, and he's telling him the Terror is probably in this hotel. And what does Steve James do? He starts jogging around the fucking theater, and then the Terror enters, gets to his gun before Steve James does, and then, by the way,
It was a bullshit death.
they're all bullshit deaths. Sorry, Chuck. They're all bullshit deaths.
I hope your floor is okay after Chuck hit the floor.
Exactly. All 4 of the deaths in this movie
Yeah.
are this.
Yeah.
All of them.
I felt
If you're going to
nothing.
make a slasher, at least give him a weapon.
Yeah, that's
Oh
the
my
thing.
God.
I felt nothing when people died.
Nothing.
And I was expecting like a really cool cat and mouse situation.
No.
Which is not difficult to execute, in my opinion, cat and mouse.
No. It should have been what the film did. I like
I just
him.
feel like they do everything wrong.
Yes, except for, ironically, the romance between him and his wife. It's really organic, but there's no reason for it to be in the movie.
No, you're right. You're right.
No
They do have
fucking
chemistry,
reason.
But
This
yeah.
movie could be cut down to 30 minutes and be an episode of a crime TV show.
Yeah.
And I would think it was generic still, but at
Yes.
least okay.
Yes.
So obviously I have a lot to say of this movie because I took a lot of notes on this one because it was pissing me off.
Yeah.
Just inconsequential scene after inconsequential scene.
Yeah.
Boring.
Like I said, Chuck movies should never be boring, and this one, I hate to say it, but it was kind of a snoozer. You know, it was.
I wanted to go to sleep.
I did too. I was like, oh my god, how much longer do we have? And it's right at 2 hours, right?
No, I don't think so.
Maybe
it's an
an
hour
hour
and a half, but it
45.
feels like 2 hours.
Yeah, that's just it.
Ugh.
The
So-
pacing is dog shit.
It's awful. The direction is decent, but there's no substance.
Yeah,
there's nothing
there's
there.
Not. There's not.
So, guys, I hate to say that we're ending this video or ending the retrospective at least on a dour note, but it's how we feel.
Yeah.
Hero and the Terror is his worst movie. Hero and the Terror is his worst movie. Maybe not his worst.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that maybe in a future video with the 90s and the 2000s.
But everything else we talked about is a 3.5, if not a 4.
Yeah, and I'll say for me, 3 and up.
Yes.
3 and up. And some
3
of
and
them
up.
are just perfect action movies. Couldn't ask for more.
Yeah, so it's pretty solid.
Overall.
Pretty solid career in the 80s, I'd
Yep.
say.
So your favorite is Lone Wolf?
Easily, yes.
And my favorite is both Lone Wolf and Code of Silence because I can't choose right now. I can't choose. I love both. Both are so different.
Yes, they are.
Both are so different, and we love Chuck Norris. You know, we love all of his idiosyncrasies, his quirks, his awkwardness, his woodenness. It's all part of what makes Chuck Norris mythology. Chuck
Yes.
Norris mythology. Now,
This exists.
this exists. Chuck Norris Karate Commandos, and you know it's cool because Commandos is spelt with a K.
Exactly.
Hanna-Barbera put out this, ready for this? 5, count 'em, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 episode TV series called Karate Commandos, where Chuck Norris voices and actually has a bit in the beginning of each episode, it seems, where he kind of introduces the story.
Which is funny as hell, I might add. It's
is.
like, if you've seen in the Spider-Man Homecoming, the Captain America scenes where he was like, so, you got detention. It's like Chuck Norris is like, so, you want to be a hero? And he's like,
Go to school.
yeah, but he's like doing an action kick or something
Yeah.
before, and he's like,
Yeah.
oh, hello, I
Yeah.
didn't see you there.
He just finished training. Yeah, exactly. So it's absolutely ridiculous, but it's cool to see some exclusive footage of Chuck. So we watched one episode of this because, frankly, it's all that we could bear.
Yes.
This is absolutely awful. This is on par with Rambo, the cartoon. And you said you hadn't seen Rambo.
I don't want. No, see, I haven't seen it because I don't want to.
Don't watch it.
I know about
It's
it.
even worse animation than this.
Yeah.
This is actually trying to rip off Johnny Quest, and you said G.I. Joe, which
G.I.
I
Joe,
agree with
probably.
totally. Either way, we had to mention this, which he did produced in '86.
Yes.
Right, and had a big part to do with it because he did all the voice work, which is, I can't even describe how bad the voice work is.
All right, I'll say this: you get together with some buddies and you maybe drink a little bit.
A lot.
It's a lot. It's entertaining.
It'll be entertaining for sure.
Yes.
So
but-
we had to mention Chuck Norris Karate Commandos. All right, so I wanted to end this video, of course, with some Chuck Norris one-liners. I have them written down here, and I'm going to throw in some Chuck Norris jokes, just for
Yes.
good measure. Some of my favorites. I don't know if you have any off the top of your head that you like. But so, in Invasion USA, this one's great. We didn't even mention this. Chuck goes to a bad guy. If you come back in, I'm going to hit you with so many rights, you'll be begging for a left. Which is it's a long one-liner, but it's so good. It's so good. And he says that in Invasion USA. So he has that one and the time to die kind of motto that he keeps going back to. We already mentioned, I don't step on toes, Little John. I step on necks. The Little John makes it so funny because Little John is like Little Dick. So he's like attacking him. You know what I mean? It's brilliant. Lone Wolf McQuaid. My kind of trouble doesn't take vacations, which is great. Not as good as if you come back in, I'll hit you with so many rights. But Code of Silence, pretty generic in terms of one-liners, but I still think pretty good. If I want your opinion, I'll beat it out of you. That was probably the first time that pops up in a movie.
That's a very Chuck one.
Yeah, it's cliche now, but...
Yeah.
And then Delta Force, not a very good one, but Sleep Tight Sucker, I think when he kills the last guy. Which is effective. You know?
Yeah, but that one's funny because the way he delivers it, he doesn't try to be like, let off some steam. He's just
Yeah.
like, sleep tight, sucker.
Very matter of fact, really, yeah. So
Yeah.
good. All right, so I'm gonna hit you guys with some Chuck Norris jokes, of which there are thousands. In fact, I have a whole set, a trilogy of Chuck Norris jokes. These are dirty as hell. I was reading you some of them earlier.
I need to own that book.
It's amazing. I've not read them. I just cracked them for the first time, but I cracked it open. And I was like, almost on the verge of tears. So, all right. So this one's great. This is a good classic. There is no chin behind Chuck Norris's beard. There is only another fist. Okay, which is now my favorite Chuck Norris joke is Chuck Norris could kill 2 stones with 1 bird. That one just slays me. That one just slays me. Chuck Norris can lead a horse to water and make it drink. Chuck Norris's hand is the only hand that could beat a royal flush. Chuck Norris does not get frostbite. Chuck Norris bites frost.
Oh my God.
I mean, you could go on and on. Chuck Norris can divide by 0. Chuck Norris watches 60 minutes in 20 minutes. And I'll take us out with a couple longer ones. These are so stupid. When taking the SAT, write Chuck Norris for every answer. You will score over 8,000. Chuck Norris always knows the exact location of Carmen Sandiego. I can't. I can't fucking breathe. This one's so fucking stupid. This one's good. I gotta deliver it though. All right. Wilt Chamberlain claims to have slept with more than 20,000 women in his lifetime. Chuck Norris calls this a slow Tuesday. Woo! Okay, so I wanted to end this video with just some laughs and some classic Chuck Norris jokes. I can't even fucking talk. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This was the first time I had a co-star on in Ben, and we really loved making this video. And I'm so glad to have you on. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I hope you come back, and maybe we could talk Chuck Norris in 90s movies, 2000s movies.
Anytime, give me the call.
That would be awesome.
I'll be there.
You have a Letterboxd, right?
I do. It's called The Film Novelist. My name is Ben Rogers, Rogers without a D. Check me out. I talk movies.
Hell yeah.
Reach out to me, get a discussion rolling.
That's right, baby. Yeah, same thing. My Letterboxd is actually Letterboxd Mike TV 4388. It's like my old AOL username I still use. I'm trying to change it to TheBoredCyborg, but you have to upgrade to Pro.
Oh.
You got to spend $20 for a year, which is fine, but I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
So check out our Letterboxds. I'd love to know what your favorite Chuck Norris movie is, or a top 5. So feel free to leave that down in the comments below. We'll get a little discussion. Do a barrel roll.
You're gonna up your table.
I know. I'm sorry. If you guys enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel and want to see more videos like it, go ahead and hit the I'm sorry, Chuck. Subscribe button, as well as the little bell for notifications. I also have a Patreon and t-shirts. Links are in the description below. Feel free to check those out, if you so please. Wow, that was a lot of talking. Anyway, guys, Bored Cyborg and Ben is out. A what?
A Seagal retrospective.
Oh, of course. I plan to do all this stuff.
Yeah.